sense
Many of us
of
have heard this
commandeering.
verse. Many of us may have had that
Commandeering,
as teachers.
or somebody that's ungifted or untrained. The Greek word here is didaskalos, and it's found nowhere else in the Bible, in the whole scriptures, unless, of course, you want to go to the book of Esther. We've spoken about that. In Esther chapter 6, verse 1, you will find this word, didaskalos. It's used where the king commanded the book of records to be read to him because he couldn't get any sleep. He commanded. So it's talking about commandeering. So that's the context when it's saying not many of you should desire to be teachers, because there were those within the assembly that were coming in and taking over. They were commandeering, as in when the king commanded the book to be read to him in the book of Esther in the 6th chapter because he couldn't get any shut-eye. So we have to look at it in the context, because many people will take this out of context. Yes, as a teacher, you do have to be very sober, because you will be held to a higher standard. But Yaakov in particular is dealing with a problem of ungifted and untrained morim, teachers. A teacher's work is done primarily with the tongue, right? Which is what he's going to get into. The position of a teacher, of course, allows for the greatest misuse of the tongue in disseminating false doctrine. The focus here is on public teaching, because all of you, every single one of you, are called to teach the word. Every single one of you on a one-to-one basis are called to teach the word. You are. But this is talking about a public discourse. The Greek reads literally, do not press yourself into the role of teaching. Do not press yourself into the role of teaching. Meaning, it has to be a calling. It has to be a calling, because it is the most challenging thing that you will ever undertake in your life, and you will be filled with so much doubt. And you will have to go back to the inception point and always remember that you were called. And I know that from experience, otherwise I could not do what I do. Because I go back to the moment that I know for a certainty that I did not ask for this. You'd be insane to ask for this. You really would. The attacks and the troubles and the trials and what it takes a toll on your body, your mind, your family, your business, on everything. But you have to go back in those doubts, which are constant. I remember the calling. And then you know you have no other choice but to continue on, because otherwise it would be akin to giving up the faith. And that you cannot do. This is the thing, though. It has to be a calling. And when I first came into the Hebrew roots or the Messianic movement, I was aghast at the midrash, which is code for a free-for-all. I mean, I was aghast. I'm like, it's like anybody who ever wanted to be a teacher that isn't called, welcome to the midrash. And you'd sit around for hours with people yapping and yapping, and you're like, I gotta go. I mean, I can't take this. And it was under the code of midrash, which is code for, basically, you're not called, so let's have a chat and just give you our opinion. You have to be very, very careful, because Moshiach cannot be democratized. As much as you would like, Messiah cannot be democratized, and the assembly cannot be democratized. That's a liberal mindset that infiltrates, but that is not what the word teaches us. So Yaakov exhorts only some to assume the position of teacher, and most should not. And another test, as we'll see as the text progresses, is about genuine faith. Faith is tested by developing self-control. Because the tongue, as we all know, it is a deep-seated work. Yaakov mentions it in each chapter for a total of 9 times. Verse 2, for in many things we offend all people. Well, I know that for sure. I offend everybody in many things. If any man offend not in speech, the same is a perfect man, and able to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits into horses' mouths, so that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Behold, also ships, which though they be very great, and are driven by fierce winds, yet they are turned around by a very small rudder, in any way that the captain desireth. You see, silence is far better than speech. Hearing and not speaking is the pathway to divine Chokmah, wisdom. Mishlei, Proverbs 13:3. The one who guards his mouth preserves his life. The one who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. Mishlei 15:4. A soothing tongue is an etz chaim, a tree of life, but perversion in it crushes the ruach. And you see so many people today in this society, and they have what? They have broken spirits. Why? Well, Yaakov tells it's because they cannot control their tongue. And if you sit around and listen to what they're talking about, after some length of time, you can conclude that Yaakov knows what he's talking about. Your broken spirit comes because you cannot control your tongue. And your tongue is connected to the keyboard of which your fingers go a-wandering. Mishlei 18, verse 21. Death and life are in the hands of the tongue, and those who live will eat of its fruit. What's going on here? Now the tongue has a set of hands? I love this. What is he talking about? You see, here's a teaching that builds scripture upon scripture to prevent us from reaching a false conclusion. Because as the hand can commit murder, well, there so can the tongue, right? But you don't want to draw the false conclusion. Because if you were to conclude falsely that the hand can only commit murder in the case of what's nearby, also the tongue can only commit murder to those that are nearby, right? Wrong. Well, Yahweh makes sure that we don't draw that false conclusion by giving us the words of the prophet Yirmiyahu. Their tongue is sharpened like arrows. Yirmiyahu 9, verse 7. Because the tongue can commit murder even from a great distance like an arrow, can it not? But now, if you were to draw a false conclusion from that, well, the arrow, that can only reach a limited distance, can it not? Well, there so far can the tongue. It can only reach a limited distance. If you were to draw that false conclusion, Yahweh secures that you will not by giving us the words of the psalmist. You see, this builds scripture upon scripture upon scripture so that we do not draw a false conclusion from the first text that the tongue is like a hand. They have set their mouth against heaven, and their tongue walks throughout the whole earth. Because these verses teach us the dichotomy of the tongue. It can kill like an arrow, or it can be sharpened as an arrow for righteousness. It can kill like an arrow, or it can be sharpened like an arrow for righteousness. You'll find death in the tongue, or you'll find life in the tongue, but you will not find neutrality in the tongue. It's impossible. There is no neutrality in the tongue. And then Yaakov goes on to make several statements. We all offend. We all stumble, including teachers. Yes, teachers, we make mistakes. We offend, we stumble. Yaakov, of course, includes himself in this with the first person plural. Beware. Stumbling arrests our progress. Now, offending, stumbling in word, the reference is to speech, such as in teaching. Don't be afraid. As teachers, we cannot be afraid to admit our mistakes. And if you're called, then that won't be a problem. But if you're not called, you will defend your turf even when you know you're wrong. That's the difference. If you're called, you'll know that you'll make mistakes, but you know that you continue on. And many of time I've stood up here publicly and said, I am sorry, I have taught this way, but I was wrong. Because we're all learning. If you admit you're wrong, then people actually learn to trust you more because they know that you're being honest. But that takes a certain amount of confidence in what? The calling. The reassurance isn't in man, but the reassurance is in the inception point, which was the calling. Don't hold on to your dogma as you teach just to save face. It's not worth it. Perfect, it talks about here. It's not talking about sinless. This means having reached a goal of spiritual maturity. If we consistently don't stumble in word, then we have attained a certain amount of spiritual maturity, right? Right. Then that one is able to bridle his whole body also. And this is huge. Think of this with your children. This verse right here is huge. I really want the mothers and the fathers to grasp what I'm about to say, because this is seriously the most important verse for raising children. If you can grasp what Yaakov is saying here, it has got exponential. The impact will just literally go down the generations. If we are able to bridle the tongue, it bridles the whole body also, does it not? Look at this. Control of the tongue is the product of genuine faith. If faith can control the tongue, it can control everything. The key to our children's success. A controlled tongue reigns in the whole body, effectively restraining sin in all of its bodily appetites. What do I mean? If we can teach our children to control their tongue, then we will, by default, teach them to control their whole body against impurity in the sexual and immoral realm. Because sexual immorality comes from not controlling your tongue. By teaching our children about controlling their tongue, we will, by default, teach them about holiness and purity of the body. Because if you can teach your children to control the tongue and what that truly means, it will reign in and master the whole body, will it not? That's what he's saying. You don't teach them about trying to control their body and their sexual lusts. You teach them about trying to control the tongue, because the tongue is what maneuvers the whole body. This is huge, and it is so easily to overlook, but it is so important. The tongue is key to sexual purity. Very sobering indeed. It's a small thing that can control a large thing. Horses have their own will that must be conquered, whereas ships are subject to nature from without, yet they are controlled by a small thing within. The one who controls the rudder, well, they control the whole ship. The tongue directs our life, either towards spiritual maturity, and rewards, or divine discipline and a loss of rewards? The tongue. In Sirach, in the Apocrypha, it says in 28:24, see that you fence up your property with thorns. Lock up your silver, lock up your gold, make balances and scales for your words, and make a door and a bolt for your mouth. Right? Very sobering. Verse 5, even so the tongue is a little member, and yet it boasts great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire ignites. And the tongue, it is a fire, and the sinful world a forest. So is the tongue among our members. It can defile the whole body. Right? That's exactly what we're talking about with raising up our children. And it sets on fire the course of our Israelite race that rolls on like a wheel. Very interesting. We're going to break that down. It sets on fire the course of our Israelite race that rolls on like a wheel, and it burns on with the fire of Gehenna. For every kind of beast and of birds and of serpents and of things in the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But oh, woe, the tongue can no man tame. It is a ruly evil and full of deadly poison like asps. With it we bless Eloah, even our Abba, and with it we curse men who are made after the image of the Master Yahweh. Out of the same mouth proceeds brachot and cursing, blessing and cursing. My Israelite brothers, these things, they should not be so. We have to understand that we need to overcome the tongue, because many of us, most of us, were raised in households where the tongue had little control. So you have to work through and pray against that so that you can be delivered. The tongue is the greatest thing that needs to be overcome, and that is through prayer and fasting, whether it is the words you speak, the tone that you say them, or at the octave, the level that you speak. It is the tongue. It is the tongue. Now, look at verse 6. The literal reading of verse 6 sets on fire the course of our Israelite race that rolls on like a wheel. Ton trachon tes Genesis. Ton trachon tes Genesis in the Greek. This is going to be talking about, of course, what? Ton trachon tes Genesis. If we can't control our tongue, we will destroy our return to the Genesis cycle of covenants, which is the wheel that rolled on from Genesis 12 to Genesis 15 to Exodus 19 to 24. It's the wheel that could destroy the whole Israelite race by the tongue. Or it is the wheel that can affirm the whole Israelite race by the tongue. Yes, Yahweh, all that you have said, we shall do, the tongue proclaimed. Yet, a little bit later, the tongue said something else indeed. What did that tongue say? Oh, come, make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moshe, the man who brought us up out of the land of Mitzrayim, we don't know what has become of him. Then the tongue of Aaron proclaimed, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. You see, Yaakov is right here within the very Greek saying ton trachon tes Genesis. It's the cycle of the wheel from Genesis that the tongue either affirmed or the tongue broke that covenant, right? And then the bodily actions got caught up with the tongue in sexual immorality at Exodus 32. controlling the tongue or not controlling the tongue, the whole body is going to get involved and defiled. Is that the case? That is exactly the case, and I believe we miss that until we look at the Septuagint type style of the Greek here, and we see this phrase, ton trakon tes Genesis, the cycle of the wheel from Genesis. And you would miss that unless you understand that he is talking about what rolled out of Yahweh's mouth by a what? The tongue said an oath, did it not? And from there rolled out blessing until they renounced the blessing with the tongue and the body followed suit. Israel broke the cycle from Genesis, the wheels of the covenant. Exodus 32. And how did Moshe destroy their folly? What did he do? How did he destroy their folly? He burnt and crushed the gold and destroyed it, did he not? He destroyed that which they have created. The tongue is set on, what did he do? Set it on fire, did he not? The tongue is set on fire, the Genesis cycle of our Israelite race that rolled out like a wheel, and it burnt on with the fire of hell. You could easily read over this, but if you understand the Melchizedek covenant and the history of the tongue, and that it is cycling out from Genesis 12, and the byproduct of that was that with their tongue they said, let us make gods that brought us up out of Egypt. So Moshe destroys it with fire. This is exactly what Yaakov is speaking to the very, very scriptures. This is amazing how you could read through this and miss this, as I have for many years. But now, with the understanding that I have, I see this everywhere. The destructiveness of the tongue. The tongue is the only member of the body that appoints itself. So we have to be extremely careful of teachers that would what? Appoint themselves. It has a range of possibility in causing such evil. It appoints itself. Yahweh doesn't appoint it. When it does, it defiles the whole body. An uncontrolled tongue is morally defiling. And what do we see today with the music industry and the movie industry? It seeks to defile us all. And is it succeeding? It is succeeding within our generations. The tongue is seeking to defile the whole body, and sexual immorality and perversity is the byproduct of an uncontrolled tongue. That is why music and movies are so thrust forward by Hollywood, because they know that it will defile the whole body and send everybody into a burning, burning Gehenna. Now we look at the Greek word here for defile. It is spilio, and it is used only here and in Jude 23, and it means a stain as in your undergarments. And that is how Yahweh views us. Very sobering. If you can't control your tongue, it's as if you have a stain in your undergarments. Hardly a bride fit for her husband, is it? Right? Hardly a bride fit for her husband. Even if you keep Shabbat, even if you keep the feasts, even if you keep the dietary commandments, Yahweh commend you. But if you cannot control your tongue, you're coming to his Moedim with stained undergarments. It's outrageous. You see, you can't just keep the Moedim and then come to the feasts with stained undergarments, because you have no control over the tongue. Yahweh calls us to a higher moral and ethical cleansing, does he not? It's not just commandment keeping, it is the greater commandment keeping of controlling this wicked thing within us, the tongue, the deeper cleansing. Wrongly used, the tongue pollutes a person, its whole personality, and sets ablaze lives, valued relationships. How many relationships have been destroyed by the tongue? Right? Slander can incite a whole community. Look at what we're dealing with in 2016 with this political stuff. I mean, now when people get agitated, there's a whole new phrase. He's trumping out on you, right? Stop trumping out. I mean, but there's this whole agitation going on because slander can incite a whole community. Propaganda can inflame a nation, and nationalistic words can lead to riots in the streets, can they not? Slander and the social media platform. And we have the lamestream media inflaming a nation right now, don't we? Inflaming a nation. Our political national conventions leading to riots. And Yahweh admonishes us in Shemot, Exodus 23, do not join a mob. You do not want to be involved in that. You need to be the gray man. Do not get involved in a mob because they will literally drone you in those mobs and they will digitalize your face and you will be marked. You do not want to be involved in a mob. You want to be a gray man because you do not want to be a poster boy for FEMA roundups, right? The tongue permits itself to be used by satanic forces. I mean, don't go view it, but Jim Morrison, Led Zeppelin, Beyonce, literally, their tongue is used and was used by satanic forces. The tongue cannot be tamed by man. The tongue cannot be tamed by man. It's Yahweh who does the taming through his Ruach HaKodesh. By itself, in our hands, the tongue is ungovernable. It's unruly. It's an instrument of cruelty and wickedness. But with Yahweh, it can put demons to flight, and it can be the healing balm of Gilead. You see, the point that Yaakov, James, is trying to make, he's using nature, is that nature is very consistent, whereas the tongue is inconsistent. Verse 11. Does a fountain send forth at the same place sweet mayim and bitter? Can a fig ates, my Israelite brothers, bear olive berries? Or a vine figs? So likewise, salt water cannot be made sweet. Epictetus writes in Discourses 2:20, so strong and unconquerable a thing is human nature. For how can a vine be moved to behave? How can it be moved to behave not like a vine, but like an olive tree, or an olive tree not like an olive tree, but like a vine? It's impossible. It's inconceivable. Neither, therefore, is it possible for a human being entirely to lose human affections. Now, listen to this. This was written a long time ago, but it really speaks to our generation about the tongue. Listen to this. And even so, read today to a generation that witnesses the tragic theater. Listen to this. We go on to say in Discourses 2:20, neither therefore is it possible for a human being entirely to lose human affections. And even so, those who have their male organs cut off cannot cut off their desires as men. He associates this with the tongue, mutilating the body and the whole, what we call today, the transgender agenda, is connected to what? The tongue. It's connected to the tongue. As we live in a culture that pushes the fluidity of gender, as we live in a culture where the minority are portrayed now as the majority. Oh, apparently this is happening all over. because they take the minority and portray it as the majority. Meaning, according to this ancient writing, you can emasculate yourself, you can inflict heinous crimes against the Creator upon your body, but you're still going to be shackled by your sin nature, steered by your tongue. And your tongue is what led you to emasculate yourself and cut off your genitals. And this is a very ancient document. But Yaakov was pulling from what was in circulation at the time and showing that the unbridled tongue literally leads us into what we know as today, the transgender agenda. I mean, think about it. Look at it in the body, the tongue. Look at the tongue's position within your body. Oh, proud tongue. All parts of the human body, they stand upright. Oh, no, but not that tongue, does it? No, the tongue gets to recline within the body. All parts of the human body, oh, they're outside, facing the elements, right? Oh, no, but not the tongue. That gets to recline on the inside. All parts of the human body, they're prone to injury. Oh, no, but not the tongue. The tongue itself, it has two walls set up to protect it. One of bone, the teeth, and the other of flesh, the cheeks. What more can be done for you, O tongue, O lying tongue, reclining, cozy, defended lying tongue? You set yourself up reclining as a king in a well-defended palace, tasting every delicacy and debauchery that comes your wicked way. Oh, you wicked tongue, look at its place. Look at its place. You see, we live in a world where the outward senses are exalted and the inner senses consigned to oblivion. That's the world that you and I live in, but not the ancient world, not the ancient world. You see, the results is the outward senses, which is devoid of reason, obtains what? All those outward senses, they're devoid of reason, they obtain supremacy. And we live in a culture where the outward senses have supremacy, right? It's all about the natural, the physical. That has supremacy over the inner. Yet to us, when we look at the inner, and if we speak about the inner, then what? We're what? Haters. What we say is madness because we look at the inner. Because the world looks at the outer that has supremacy and has taken the inner and confined it off to oblivion. You see, it begins to rule. Those outer senses begin to rule. It's a tyrannical rule that is upon our very culture right now. It puts down what it perceives to be as rebellion. When the conscience or the spirit cries out for truth, well, that's rebellion, and it tries to put it down, does it not? Exactly. It tries to shut it down so quickly. This is when a terrible confusion comes upon a culture. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened with this transgender agenda. A terrible confusion has come upon this culture, and it is overtaking man. As might happen if a household of servants were to conspire and set upon the master. If the conscience or the spirit cries out for truth, it's set fire to and burnt by the outward senses that bellow the flames, placing the spirit and conscience beneath as fuel to flame the lustful passions in the material world that we live in. Think about it. The outward senses today in our culture, they burn down the inner senses using the conscience and the spirit of believers as fuel. And then they defile the whole man if the tongue is let loose. And this is what we're up against. This is what we're up against. Verse 13. Before I get there, it says in Mishlei, Proverbs 16:27, a worthless man digs up evil, while his words are like a scorching fire. Mishlei, Proverbs 26, verse 20. For lack of wood, the fire goes out, and where there is no whisperer, contention, it quietens down. Like charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. You see, a loose tongue can send shockwaves into the future for its owner, as well as those around the owner. Who is a wise man and endured with training among you, verse 13. Let him show a tov, a good lifestyle, with his mitzvot, in meekness of chokmah. Wisdom isn't words, but works of a good life. Wisdom is proved by works. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your levanot, your hearts, boast not, and lie not against the emet, the truth. This chokmah, wisdom, descends not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and it is from Satan. You see, false wisdom is a result of an untamable tongue. People speak what's in their hearts. In Job 33, verse 2, behold, now I open my mouth, my tongue in my mouth speaks. My words are from the uprightness of my heart. My lips speak knowledge sincerely. There's 3 evidences of earthly wisdom. Number 1, there's going to be bitter jealousy, envy, begrudging others' success, and being resentful. That's earthly, carnal wisdom. Number 2, there's going to be discord in the heart. You ever get that? I call it a high-octane ping. Those of us that have had old diesel Mercedes, we know what that's like, where you put the foot on the accelerator and you get that ping. You know when you're talking about somebody or talking to somebody and there's that, and it just gets you right there? Apparently I'm the only one, sorry. Discord in the heart, rivalry, selfish ambition, being unethical towards others to advance your own station. That's the second instance or evidence of earthly wisdom. And the third instance or evidence of earthly wisdom is boast not. Don't gloat over another. Don't think yourself superior. Lie not against the truth. Don't modify the truth. How many people modify the truth for their own gain? We even have a phrase for it in our culture. What's a white lie? What's that? What's that? It's kind of like kind of pregnant, right? I mean, you're a liar or you're not. Well, it was just a little white lie. You're like Cinderella and the dwarfs then, right? Or whatever. It's a bloody fantasy. It's a fairy tale. My point, exactly. Lie not against the truth. Don't modify the truth for your own gain. This refers, I believe, what Yaakov was talking about is the gospel message. How many today have modified the gospel message, the truth, for their own gain, for their denomination's gain? Right? We'll modify it for our own denomination's gain. We know what the truth is, but we'll modify it because it's going to really benefit us. Yaakov depicts false wisdom as earthly, sensual, and in the King Jimmy, devilish. To Yaakov, it's nothing more than demonical. It proceeds from an evil spirit. It originates from the 3 fronts of spiritual warfare, and those 3 fronts of spiritual warfare are, number 1, the world. Number 2, the flesh. And number 3, the devil. But we live in this crazy Harry Potter generation. Because when that Harry Potter stuff came out, the children that were raised upon that, They are the adults now walking amongst us that have been highly influenced from childhood. Their language is peppered with it. You couldn't be in the middle of a board meeting with executives and people will be saying, oh, that's just magic. And I'm like, you could be in the middle of a bloody audit. Oh, it's magical. And you're like, their language is peppered with it. They're walking amongst us. Their whole belief system is based upon automatic writing from Satan that was given to J.K. Rowling's. Automatic writing from the demonic realm. She admits to it. She admits to it. J.K. Rowling's admitted that she was given what to write from another dimension. In the ancient world, they recognized its origins as automatic writing, satanic occult infiltration. But today, we worship the slaves with Pulitzer Prizes and herald them on pedestals, leading whole generations into demonic dimensions of depravity. And they walk amongst us. And you're afraid to lay hands on somebody and speak in tongues? But it's okay for them to pepper their language with Harry Potter culture, and that's okay. But you feel intimidated about stepping out and speaking of the things of Yahweh? What's wrong with us? We need to be bold and courageous. If you can sit in an audit and talk about Harry Potter, then when somebody's lying on the street, then I can roll up to them and speak in tongues and I can bring healing. Right? We need to get perspective, because what is insane is the Harry Potter generation. That is wisdom that is sensual, earthly, carnal, and demonic. But the wisdom that comes from Yahweh is supernatural, and the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh with all of its manifestations. But we live in a culture where we're outnumbered, but we have the greatest armies of Yahweh at our disposal if we just have what? Emunah, faith. Faith and the outworking of it within our community. Verse 16. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom from above first indeed is pure, then peaceable, gentle, easily entreated, full of kindness and good fruits. It's uncontentious, it's unhypocritical. And those that make shalom sow the fruit of tzedakah in shalom. There's 7 characteristics of true chokmah, emet chokmah. Number one, it is pure. Purity is primary and fundamental. You will not obtain true wisdom if you defile yourself with what you eat, if you defile yourself by what comes out of your mouth. And Yahusha spoke about that. Now, I know the Baptists have totally perverted that to say that you can go up and have a bacon sandwich, but we know that's not so. Yahusha is talking about the greatest, which is control of the tongue. We need to be undefiled and clean in our thoughts, in our speech, in our dress, in our actions. That doesn't mean, men, you wear a dress, but in our dress. You have to be careful today. Right, Ducky? It's about an internal characteristics. And that is what flows with the other 6 characteristics that follow. Number 2, peaceable. We have to heal divisions, but never at the expense of purity. You don't go and heal the divisions by compromising purity. No, that's not what we're going to do. Number 3, we have to be reasonable, not insisting on our own rights. We have to take into consideration others. Number 4, we need to be easily entreated and approached. It means to be submitted to Yahweh's military discipline, to be ready to obey, having a heart inclined to obeying the mitzvot, the commandments. And number 5, we have to be full of rachamim, mercy. We need to be compassionate, have pity, be helpful, and do deeds that are helpful to others. Number 6, we need to be uncontentious or without variance, not given to prejudices or partiality, being undivided. And finally, number 7, unhypocritical, free from pretense. We just need to be genuine. That's what people need to see. Just be genuine about your faith. The greatest thing that you can share is your own testimony. Genuineness. People don't need highbrow religion. They just need to know genuinely, how did you come to where you're at with the Mashiach? Genuine faith. That's what they want, a genuine heart. That is what draws people, the genuine walk that you have. It's amazing. Psalm 37, verse 30, we have to understand that righteousness can't be produced when these conditions aren't met in the life of the believer, those 7 conditions. Psalm 37, verse 30. The mouth of the Zaddik utters chokmah, and his tongue speaks mishpat, judgment. Those that can't control their tongue are directly associated with a place opposite the kingdom of heaven. You see, we have to master the tongue. We have to master the tongue. So what happened to me yesterday before I come to teach this? Well, the family was in a station wagon stuck in traffic on I-5 for hours upon hours upon hours. Then I decided that I would be chief navigator of the Nolan enterprise as we decided to go all the back routes back to Salem with my wife driving. It was an exercise in today's message. And I was not victorious, but neither was my wife. But the children did pretty good. They really did. I think we were in the car for about 6 hours, were we not? Total time. It's crazy. Oh, we were going everywhere. Take a left. No, right. No, stop. Oh, it was madness. But we have to master the tongue, all in all. So we can master sin. And Yahweh did admonish Cain. And if you do not do well, Cain, if you do not do well, then what? Sin is crouching at the door. And its desire is for you. But you must master it. And its desire is in that little reclining tongue that has got walls of comfort built for it as it reclines inside the body away from the elements. Oh, proud tongue. Yaakov chapter 3 truly teaches us, whether we are teaching to one or teaching publicly to a multitude, that ultimately true wisdom, teaching and everything, and mastery of the whole body is all connected to what? What we say. And that's the battle. And it truly is overcoming a lot of the time the familiar spirits. You were raised with your parents speaking in a certain way or a certain tone. And then you do that to your children. And they do that to their children. Or you do it to your spouse or whatnot. But the tongue truly is the work that we need to overcome. Because truly we find that for us to continue on, to be effective and minister, we need to be what? Delivered from the destructiveness of earthly sensuality and false wisdom, so that we can overcome and now walk in true Chokmah, which is from above. So this was a great message for me to hear as I spent the week studying through it, and then of course culminating with sitting in traffic yesterday was my test, which I failed. But I come back today fully armed and ready to go down the freeway tonight. Amen. Questions, comments, anybody at all? Wonderful. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Well, let's close in prayer. We are so thankful. Abba Yahweh, we are thankful for the words of Yaakov, Abba, that we can truly understand that the greatest work, Abba, is in the control of the tongue and how we speak and what we speak. Abba, truly we ask for you to minister to us more by your Ruach HaKodesh, and guard us as this generation burns with wickedness, passions of the flesh, and we see it ultimately with people defiling their own created body. But we understand where it comes from. Let us have that wisdom from above to be able to speak in to people's lives as we meet them on the streets in Yahusha's mighty name. Amen. Amen.